We're having a conversation about children this hour, and we're looking at an issue that has been close to the hearts of very many people. And we're looking at now inroads that we've made, or maybe not made, to ensure that our children are safe. Two gentlemen join us for that conversation this hour. Mwambi Mongare is the Deputy Director of the Children's Services, Ministry of Labour and Social Protection, and Samuel Munyuwiny. I you know the way they butcher my name. I'm sorry. Munyuwiny is the Executive Director of African Institute for Children's Studies. You'll forgive me, but gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu Sana. In the circles in which we operate, we've met at one point or another, and it's good to be here to discuss these very important issues. We'll be looking at violence against children in Kenya, and are we making any progress to stopping it, to decreasing the levels and to making sure that children are safe? We're going to welcome you to the Situation Room this morning, and CT has that welcome for you.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Uganda. Uganda is Kenya's neighbor to the... Is it west?
It's west.
It's west. Yes. A bad man does not lack qualities which are pleasing to him. Remember, if we say someone is bad, it is us, not him, who think he has bad qualities. But maybe in his own opinion, he thinks he's okay. After all, he may even have a family. And somebody may call him dear husband, another one may call him daddy. So.
Daddy dearest. Sam, what do you think about that? What do you think about that proverb?
I think it's true. It's true in many ways, and maybe even talking about what you're just about to talk about. If you think of a child or any adult growing up in that matter, you always have a sense of who you are, and that determines a lot of how you relate with every other person. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think it's the good part that we need to be able to encourage people to appreciate what is the good thing about me. Very important in enable them to have a fair and good relationship with others.
And what about you?
Okay. I think Mr. Muga is right. From that statement, there is nothing good, there is nothing bad. It is your thinking which makes it so. I think you have heard of that statement. There's nothing good. It is the way you look at the things which makes you say that person is a bad guy, that lady is a bad lady. It is the way you look at it. But the person as an individual, I think unless you have done introspection or you have done introspection and you look at yourself at the mirror and see whatever you are doing, whether it is right or wrong. More so when it comes to the issue of addressing mankind issues. People look at things in a very different way. That's why you see some people are thieves. Do you see him as a thief? But he doesn't believe that he's a thief. I was following a certain story where a radio in Tanzania was saying that the husband was a robber with 2 guns. But the lady never knew. Yeah. But that was the best husband she had. The best father she had for her children. And at the end of the day, the man had to be nabbed. That's when the lady had to confess that he came to realize later that the best husband he had was a robber with guns.
The worst to many.
It was the worst to many, and who had killed so many people. You will see it in the media, and even he was cursing, saying, that person should be put where he belongs. Like, I'm a Christian, I will take you to the Bible. When King David killed Uriah, and took the wife to his place. Remember, Prophet Nathan came and gave, you know the story. Yeah. What did King David say? That man deserves to die. The one who took the one sheep which belonged to a poor person and slaughtered for his sisters, and he had 99. Then Nathan reminded him, King David, who is that one? What's Bathsheba doing in your house?
Indeed.
So he changed. So thanks for that. Yes.
As we look at this conversation and looking at these issues and asking ourselves then who children are in communities, who children are in our society, and what protections then are required for them. Samuel, you head an organization, the African Institute for Children's Studies. Give us an overview, essentially, on what you do, and then we'll come to the ministry and say then that department, what are you mandated to do when it comes to the protection of children? But let's start with you, Samuel.
Thank you, Ndu. Thank you, Muga. Let me first commend you for prioritizing the matter of children and violence against children. Often when you look at governments and you want to measure what is success, it will be very quick to point on the roads, on the number of schools we built, but violence against children often isn't seen as an area that can be counted on as a political milestone. So this is critical, and we'll come back to it perhaps in our conversation. So I work with African Institute for Children's Studies. This is a Kenyan organization, a Pan-African organization founded back in 2009, and we founded this as locals in Africa with a Pan-African mind, that we should be able to know how better to solve our issues than any other person. We have friends from other continents coming to help us, but if you think about context issues, that's very important, and you need to shape that using evidence. And so being able to come and reflect as a country, as a continent, are we making progress in terms of the numbers, in terms of the policies that we are making, in terms of public financing, how much money are we putting on addressing violence, doing prevention and response issues, and building capacity. One of the things that really inspired us at this foundation of this organization was, you realize, for example, when children are out, say in the street, a lot of us will be, of course, correctly driven by those emotions and feeling I need to do something right. And one of the responses we've done over time is sending children to a home, a children home. And often is the wrong one. I know there's a great conversation going on today, given what the Cabinet Secretary recently said. So we wanted to bring perspective. Are there cultural ways in which we did this? What is the name of an orphan in your community? What did it mean? So really bringing in that is part of the critical element that we are trying to do, and supporting policy and creating structures to do that, and advocacy.
Okay. What is the Department of Children's Services mandated to do for Kenya's children, Mwambi?
I think, thanks, Madam Ndu and Mr. Moga, for inviting us to this conversation. First of all, it's good I make it clear. And now, one of the days when we were a department, now we are a directorate. From last year, and as by law, the Children Act 2022, now we are a directorate with 8 departments. And I happen to work in one of the departments within the directorate. It's good when somebody grows when you are a child. You become a youth or a teenager, you become a youth, then you become an adult. So which means we are moving towards the right direction. We used to be a very small department by then. Now we are a directorate with 8 departments. Our dream is one day to have a ministry to deal with children issues in this country. And to have our own sector called child protection, not social protection. Because
how far are we from this dream?
We are in the right direction, Mr. Muga. Because when we used to have a very small department, we had very few officers in this country who were managing children issues. Now we are in over 330 sub-counties in this country. There are days up to the year 2006. Some like a county like Tana River, the President Tana River, since independence, it had never had a children officer. So you can see now at least we are everywhere. Even if it's a one man running the office, we are getting there.
What is required for it to become a ministry?
It depends on the executive. There has to be an executive order.
Because
that's the right of the president to decide.
Because one could argue that over 65% of the population in this country are actually children.
They are children. It is true.
So really, is it a difficult case to make? Because if you're talking about the need of meeting the very fundamental requirements of a population, that population does require a ministry that actually looks after their interests and nothing else.
How I wish Mr. Moga and Madam Ndu and Sam, the other name is even for me, I need to eat this pesky food so that
we're in the same place, don't worry.
Yes, so I can call him Sam. So, that's right. What I'm saying, children issues are on 4 pillars. The most you can know at Bira is the participation Bira. You cannot talk about us without us. Is it not true?
Indeed.
You are talking about the animals. They have somebody protecting animals in this country.
Oh, yes.
They know how many lions are there, how many lionesses, how many have died, how many have been poached through poachers. But when it comes to the issue of children, I think the way Mr. Munyuwiny put it, we have not taking it seriously because these are our children. So as a directorate, we are doing our best. And I think as we are moving on, we will prove to you that we have done our best as a directorate. We are just 2-3 years old since we became a directorate.
Yes.
And we are moving the right direction because one day we are dreaming that we are given a state department. Then if another president comes, he can feel obligated to give us what? Sorry. To give us.
It happens.
To give us, that's from the office, to give us a ministry whereby we have a minister dealing with children in this country. So we are moving in the right direction. But as a directorate, we have done a lot whereby we have done so many things about children. We are among the first countries in Africa to have done 2 surveys to check on the status of children when it comes to this issue of violence. We did one in 2010.
Yeah.
We did another one in 2018, 2019. There are other 5 African countries which have done 1. At least as we have done 2. And there are so many studies going on. Like now, presently, we are doing a qualitative study to see how are we faring on.
Okay.
But the issue of protecting children is not a one-man show. It's not a one-ministry show. It is scattered all over.
It's a collective.
When we have good roads, our children are safe. We have good buildings, our children are safe.
Indeed.
Yes.
Let's look at the issue of, let's look at a definition now. We're talking about violence against children. And the thing is that it could be subjective and objective in nature at the same time. That if one were to spank a child at home, in the eyes of another, this could actually be violence against children. In the eyes of somebody else, it's just discipline. So obviously, in order for us to deal with something, we must look then at the definitions that we're using to deal with it. So when we talk about violence against children, Samuel, what exactly are we saying?
Thanks, Stu. I think let's actually begin by, you had mentioned there's the definition of who is a child. While it may appear very obvious that we're talking about anyone below 18 years of age, but often when you look at, for example, a mother who is 16, then the dynamics begin to change, and the expectations around what they're supposed to do, what they're entitled to, will change. And we've seen this in situations, say, where the 16-year-old now is working, and you're saying they have the benefit from law or being protected and given access to continuing education. So that is usually it becomes very cloudy. There are cultural issues where there are child marriage. There are communities in Kenya where this is still very, very common, sometimes linked to religious practices, and that clouds really what kind of interventions you want to be able to do. But there is a global definition of what is violence against children, and there are 3 broad classifications of the ways in which this manifests. So one is the physical violence, and I think this is very visible to many people. This child has been beaten, and as we talk about that, let's be conscious of what spaces are the children going to be in. Most children should be either at home, in school, or in a playground somewhere. And so if you think about the school, is there violence going on? Is there bullying and such things happening? Then there is the sexual violence, which leaves people with a lot of trauma. And so therefore, this is another one that we need to be able to track. And when you look at where it's happening again, many times in the places that are supposed to be the most safe for a child, by family members, incest cases are really increasing. And so that's another very important one. And let me link it to why we must be very keen on this matter, because the trauma that sexual violence leaves on people often then comes and follows up. So when you look at homicide rates in Kenya, for example, between 2010 and now, we've been on an increasing number throughout. I think the latest numbers we had about 3,000, about 100 cases reported, up from about 2,900 in the year 2021. So these are another critical areas. Then the emotional abuse, and this is linked to mental health. We did some study last year as African Institute on behalf of one of the big social media providers in the world, and they were trying to understand, is there a link between the increasing suicide rates among teenagers and the emotional violence and mental health issues that come in from there. So I think they're very objective measures. The violence against children study that Mwambi has mentioned is been done across countries. and very comparable. So they are quite very objective yardsticks.
Can we look at the violence that is meted against children and not also try to understand what it is that drives the perpetrators? Because it's not as though the children are directing violence at themselves. And if there's an increase in it, it means there are people or groups of people who are responsible for this. And what is it that is causing them? And why is it that there is an increase?
Thanks, Mr. Muga. As I think before we address on the percentages, the rates, and the numbers, first of all, the first thing we have to ask, who are the perpetrators?
Yes.
The perpetrators are you and me.
Yes.
If you have children, when I look at your hair, where I come from, you are an elder, you have grandchildren or great-grandchildren. Is it so? We are the perpetrators are at the home. That's where, as my colleague has said, where we expected the best place, the most safest environment, we expect our children to be in. That's where they are first violated. Sexual violence, physical violence, and emotional violence. The worst we have done, yes, we have tried to handle sexual and physical because we can see it. What about emotional violence? What is happening in our country, and I think it's good for the Kenyans to know this, we have normalized violence against the children. We have seen it as something very normal. If you are a Christian, the good book tells me, spare the rod, spoil what? The child. But this rod is being overused. Indeed. You have seen children being caned in schools. What's the one of the best environments we expect children to be safe? Children are caned until they die. You have seen it. Some have been maimed. Their numbers are there. The way you said the issue of when you see a child committing suicide at the age of 80 years, is it not worrying? Something must have gone wrong. What has happened in the communities? People have normalized the violence, the three. The worst violence is child poverty, what you call economic violence, and neglect.
Mwambi, I want to interject and ask you something here, and maybe just in line with what CT is saying, that what are the reasons? I mean, it seems almost crazy to ask that, why did you do this to a child? Because there would be absolutely nothing that you would say that would then make me understand it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, when you say, oh, well, because 1, 2, 3, for me, that would be no justification in my mind that somebody who was defenseless against you, that you did this to, right? However, look at the case that we saw yesterday, and it's because we see cases, examples every day. Yeah. The case we saw yesterday of the woman who is said to have killed her child, beat her child to death because this child refused to eat. She was arrested yesterday. Now, that is not a normal situation. That is not the reason why that child died, obviously. There was an underlying issue.
Yes.
So are we looking at these underlying issues and dealing with them, or should we be? Or should we just say, no, you do not beat a child and that is it? Are we looking at the underlying issues? Because in many cases, we'll deal with that. The person who rapes a child or performs some kind of sexual violence against a child is not normal. That person is suffering mental health issues. It is clear. So there are underlying issues. Do we deal with those as a form then of solution finding?
Okay. I think what you have said is true. When you see this lady beating her child to death because the child has refused to eat, let's go. You know, the problem is we look at things at the surface value.
Yes.
She has killed her child. She has been arrested. She has been taken in for murder, manslaughter, and all of those things, the penal code. But the problem is our investigators don't go back and dig to the issue of this young lady or this lady. That's where we have been going wrong. We don't look for things at what has caused it. Madam Mondo and Mr. Muga and my colleague, I can tell you, violence begets violence. If you are brought up in a violent environment, obviously there is Muga, I hope you understand Kiswahili.
Not only do I understand it, I can speak it.
You can speak it, okay. Yes. Mototo uona kisogo cha nina.
Yes.
The child sees the backside of the mother. And I think that's the only person who sees the back of the mother more times than another person. So in management, they call it sitting binary. Neri does it wrong. So the person copying knows this is the normal way of doing, even if the wrong way. Go to places of work when people have been employed, the way they are being oriented. If it was the wrong way through corruption and other things, they think that's the normal way. That's what is happening. When you see somebody killing a child until the child collapses, the child dies. If we go to the history of this young lady, she must have suffered emotional violence when she was young, or sexually violated. There was sexual violence, and there was a lot of physical violence. So she has normalized, it doesn't see anything is wrong. If we can take and check the mental, the emotional capacities of this individual, you will find this person must have been brought up in a very violent environment. And that's what is happening.
Samuel, so as we look at then, because at the end of the day, when we say we're trying to reduce the numbers, if not eliminate violence against children completely, we've got, steps. So what steps have been taken? And if we did an audit of where we are today in the reduction or steps towards the elimination of violence against children, have we seen an improvement? I mean, the stories that we read every day, the things that we see would give a very grim picture. But what's happening?
Yeah, I was actually going to follow up on what Muga mentioned. I think there's a good side of this story that it's possible to reduce it. And again, going back to the evidence, there's 2 studies that Kenya has done in 2010. The National Survey on Violence Against Children, and in 2019 actually have shown like a 30% reduction. So when we did the first studies in 2010, we had in the height of almost 80%, 82% of boys and about 76% of girls reporting. These are those who are up to 18 years who've ever experience any of those 3 forms of violence. So we are seeing a reduction, and we look forward maybe in another because that was 2019, in another 10 years or so, if we do another one, it will be the other good indicator that shows that is reducing, though it will be, the trick side of it is the number of cases being reported have increased significantly, especially to our line 116, which is a free toll-free line, which is a good sign. Because, and I want to really, give credit to the media. You've done a great role in making people aware that you can stand up against abusers, and therefore we're seeing an increase. What could be contributing to this, and maybe where is also the gap? I come in from a civil society's point, so part of our role is really to help check government and see what it is. So besides the numbers that we are talking about, for you to be able to track and say, are we making progress, is to ask ourselves, is the institutional framework that is responsive enough? And while we can say we've made progress in, say, having more children officers, like Mwambi has said, one of the reporting points for the first case, wherever something happens, is the police station. Can you imagine if your child went to a police station and said, I had my post on Facebook, and I'm nude and it's going viral? What would be the likely response of our police officers? Wewe kijana mbona unacheza, msichana mbona unajianika? So there's a lot of attitude appreciating that you actually meant to respond and protect the person. So the institutional framework, while it's improving, I think there's a lot more to be done in terms of training and building capacity for first responders. A study was done about 3 years ago that also showed that chiefs play a very critical role. They're also first responders, and a number of cases sometimes don't go beyond the chief. And therefore, these are institutions that we must be very critical on and making sure that it is. I also sit in a standing committee on access to justice for children. This is by NCJ. NCJ is the National Council for Administration of Justice. And in there, we're grappling with how do we fast track access to justice for children. So institutions such as those are also very, very critical. And the other thing that really shows where your heart is, do you put the money where your mouth is? And unfortunately, like Mwambi has mentioned, why we having this, clamoring and really asking that let's have the children department or the director for children more visible, maybe at the president's office, is if you compare the amount of resources that we are allocating to the directorate, they are often far below the budget. In fact, certain para-institutions are receiving almost in the tune of 2 billion when, Mwambi, I don't think you are yet at over 200 million shillings per year. But if you look at what is the impact of that on us as a society, and this is where sometimes we think about violence against children and you're thinking about a child in a poor community.
Yes.
Unfortunately, when everything comes to the end, it wouldn't matter, because when they meet in college, and we've seen those very sad situations where young people in college killing each other because of love triangle and such things.
Previous experiences. Yes. As we came to that, it's interesting. Sam, you mentioned a budget. And Mwambi, let's look at that. The directorate, in terms of how it is funded to deal with some of these issues. And the question is, it may seem like it is an obvious answer, but then what do you need money for to be able to fight these cases of violence? To say, let's build information and awareness around what needs to be done.
Okay, thanks, Madam Du. On the issue of budget, I think it's good direct vice through those who don't receive 200 million. At least we receive 1.3 billion, which is a very big road from whatever we used to receive. At least the money is going up. I have at a slow pace. And even for next financial year, we are asking for more resources. And this money, when these funds are asked for, when we do requisition for funding, there are, as I said, there are 4 pillars. Whereby this is concerning children are built on. We have the survival pillar, we have the development pillar, we have the protection pillar, and the last 3 is the participation pillar. All of these pillars, if you need the resources to make sure that when a child has been born, this child is given a chance to survive. When a child is of age, is supposed to go for immunization, we have to make sure that these children have been taken for immunization. If you don't know, there are some communities who don't immunize their children because of maybe cultural background and religious background. As you are aware, you have heard from some religions where you say you should not take your child, or when you are sick, you pray to God so that you get cured. Because some people prayed and some doors were opened. Somebody went to the River Jordan, swam there 7 times, and the ripples went.
Yeah.
So they say there's no, but those are the kind of things we are doing. We need the resources to get vehicles, equipment, good offices, and to make follow-ups on these cases, wherever a case has happened. If a child has undergone, is a victim of defilement, not rape, because for children they are defiled.
Yeah.
So a lot of resources is needed for the investigating team, that's for the police officers. For our department to do the social inquiries, we need to go to courts, give evidence, look for witnesses, let us get all of the story. At the story, we have to give it the way it is so that at least we protect these children. And I think that's what has been happening. And I think it's good we clarify. The police of today are not the police of yesterday. Mr. Mongare, you can bear witness. More so when it comes to the issue of children. And now in the new Children Act 2022, it has been made mandatory for the Inspector General of Police to ensure there's a child protection unit in every police station.
In every police station in Kenya today?
In Kenya. That's what we are fighting for. You know, the law came to being last year.
Yeah.
So we are struggling already. I know so many police stations are struggling to put those structures on. But before that, we said even if there is no building, can we have that in every police station we have a gender and a children desk? Wherever these cases are, they know the way Mr. Sam put it. These days, if it's a child who has want to report, they don't report at the front office. There is a room whereby those officers manning, they are not in uniform. They are in civilian, but they are police officers, either ladies and men who are in civilian. Remember when the people see uniform, even us here, the way we are doing this, police officers walk in uniform with their guns, even without the guns. We start asking what has gone wrong.
Yes.
So for children, that's what we are doing. We are back to child-friendly as possible. And further, when it comes to the issue of other investigation, we are very happy to the Director of Criminal Investigation, Kenya, DCI. We have come up with the Anti-Human Trafficking and the Child Protection Unit. We have one office here in Nairobi, South Sea, and we have another office in Mombasa. Our dream is that they have 47 units in all counties in Kenya. So that when it comes to investigating children, because those officers have been trained to do forensic and everything about concerning children. At least we are moving somewhere. And on the issue of reduction, let us be very sincere. You cannot do away with violence. What we are doing, remember there's a time, 2000, the former president was saying the issue of poverty, that it was supposed to be done away with. He realized it was a mistake. He called it poverty reduction strategy paper. Remember, he was saying let us remove poverty. So on the issue of violence, what we are fighting is the issue of reducing. The MAPE, the way Mr. Sam has put it, the start of 2010 indicated almost 80% or over our children who reported, and they were 18 to 24. They said during their childhood, they experienced one form, 2, or the 3. That was around 80%. The survey of 2018-19 indicated it has reduced from 80% to 56 average. I think that's a plus for us. But what hit us, as we were celebrating the gains, COVID came. So after COVID, things nose dived. Remember the issue of the teenage pregnancies?
Yes.
Those are marriages. Those are young children conceiving, having sexual, as by law, a person who is under 18 cannot, there's no consensual sex.
Yes.
That's when you have done what you call defilement, you have done. So all of these things, we are grappling with all of those, but we are happy that we are moving in the right direction. And from 2020, after this thing came on, as a directorate, through the Public Service Commission, at least we have employed more than 250 new officers who have been distributed to rural corners of this country, and a lot of good work is happening. So, Mr. Muga.
If the discussion we're having was a medical one, I would say that what you have just stated is, one, very encouraging and heartening, but it's a curative approach towards a healthcare problem that requires a preventative approach. You see, there's the term we use, causal effect, an event that leads to something else. The environment in which a child grows up when they're very young, it's just around the mother, not even around the parent, it's around the mother. And that's why many African proverbs revolve around the mother and a child. But the environment in which this mother exists, and which will ostensibly influence how this mother goes about their business, and among their businesses looking after this child and others. Now, that cannot be ignored as we talk about violence against children or the abuse of children. The environment that very many parents grow in, and with every generation it changes, is often that cultural heritage that we all inherit. Now, we underplay it because we think that because of modernization, we are in the 21st century and we subscribe to the norms, whether it is some declaration by some UN body or some recognized best practices, whatever terminology you want to use. However, these things are very deep-rooted in us, and they will affect the way we make decisions and the way we do things. Okay. You raise the issue of you take a matter to a police station. Leave the matter of the child alone. A grown-up person, a man or a woman, takes a matter of domestic violence or police station. The most likely response will be, hii ni mambo ya nyumbani, nani, wacha kupiga bibi. It is treated very casually. Is it that the policeman does not understand the law? They do. Is it that they don't know what the ramifications? They do. But why do they summarize everything that is presented and say, excuse me, this is a domestic matter, go and resolve it? It is the cultural norms that influence the way we go about our business. Why is it, for instance, that early child marriages are talked about, but they still occur? If you're talking about FGM, we talk about it, and you're told it is still practiced. And if you look at the people who perpetrated the most, are the people you would think would actually, yeah, exactly. So these nuances that are peculiar and particular to us, even as we give attention to this very fundamental matter of the child, if we ignore this, our efforts will amount to a zero-sum game, because we will be talking about a cure, and yet what would prevent that particular problem is completely ignored. So the problem will likely never come to an end.
Maybe, Muga, if you allow me to just build on that thought. So one, there's been a very wrong notion that children rights or how we should bring up children, protect them from violence is almost a UN, this Mzungu thing. There's a proverb, I've actually put it as my profile, a description. It says, the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. Next time you need to read this proverb, Munga. but what does it mean? What you've used good. I think it has quite some depth, in the sense that one, this is an African proverb, and I dare say there is really no community that hasn't thought about protecting its children and bringing its children well, because we know for sure that we're bequeathing with this, we're handing over our community, our well-being. We knew that our old age is often taken care of by the child. Are there practices that are abusive within us? True. I think we've also done a movement from a communal rights. Rights were perceived more from a communal point than the individual, but not in all cases. From the community I come from, for example, really values women. The clans are even named after women, and the empowerment of women is really great. Even then. So just to come and say no, it's been so. Culturally, I think there are a number of things. And maybe something we've not mentioned, we collaborate as civil society groups and government in bringing this evidence of what works, and even from a cultural perspective. So this year we're organizing the second International Child Protection Conference in November, between the 22nd and 24th here in Nairobi. We've done this. This is going actually to be the third one. And why? Because there are very good practices that demonstrate that it's possible to use cultural systems to be able to protect children. There are things like you mentioned, FGM, that I think the way we've approached it, again, there are things which you don't need to police. There are a lot of successes that have been done even in northeastern regions of Kenya, where we've been able to work with communities and reduce that, because then you show them what is the cost of FGM on the community, what is the cost of child marriage on the community from the death of mothers. So I think it's possible to be able to bring this to get them to work, and we need to be able to put more platform to share those learning.
The issue of chiefs, and this could come in from a government perspective as well. You mentioned that, Samuel, and said, look, chiefs also have been called upon. You cannot take away their participation in this. Worrisome also is that at some point we have seen, especially when defilement of children has taken place by somebody close to them, and I mean a family member, and looking at definitions that you've made, defilement is defilement. It does not matter whether it was perpetrated by somebody in the family or otherwise, it's defilement. But we've also seen where then parents will be spoken to if they do take it to the chief, if they do take it to the court. That whole statement of Munyuwiny, we can sort it out amongst ourselves. And unfortunately, we'll find that the economic situation also lends to an action that will be taken in the future. That, okay, how about we sort things out for you, over the next couple of months? Can we put this matter to bed? And this is rampant. It happens a lot, that a child would have been defiled and the parents then are spoken to, right? By whomever it be, law enforcement officer, at whatever level, chief level, and they'll say, let's figure this out amongst ourselves. Is this an impediment to the reduction of child violence?
Okay. Thanks, Madam Du, for that the issue you have raised. The issue of the chiefs, they are under the Minister of Interior and National Coordination. They are called National Government Administration Officers. The way he has put it, at the rock, we don't have police posts or police stations everywhere. There are very few police stations and few police posts wherever they are, but they are not reaching in every community. The first thing is where we don't have police stations or police posts, if there is a crime which has been committed, the first place people run to is to the administration officers. And we are very unlucky that 1997, Mr. Moore, you were around under me, dealing with the repealing of the Chiefs Act. Remember the Chiefs Act, the chief had a lot of powers. but they were repealed.
In fact, most people don't know that administration police were actually attached to the chiefs.
To the chiefs. Now they also have now the National Police Service. Those who are attached to the chiefs had a lot of powers. That's the time they were doing most of whatever they were doing. So what we are doing as a government, as a directorate, and as a state department, we are doing a lot of awareness creation. And it's good that I inform you, when we did the first survey, we didn't come up with a prevention plan. We came with the way you said, fighting fires. We came with a response plan 2013, 2018. So when we did the second survey, we realized we are being curative instead of being preventive. So after the survey, the second survey, we came with a national prevention and response plan, 2020, 2023. It's coming to an end next year, June. So what we are doing a lot of awareness, and we are seeing so many changes. We have won those areas, as mentioned. I've been in Wajir, I've been in Ram, those far from counties. I was in Marsabit, whereby those kangaroo courts were being formed by the chiefs you are mentioning. Yeah. And we are doing a lot of with the Ngao, that's in the district, the deputy county commissioners, the county commissioners, the regional commissioners. We are there. Let the chiefs know this. But a capital offense is a capital offense.
So is there intervention in in a case whereby somebody will come and say, okay, no, we've spoken amongst ourselves and we've agreed to sort it out? Will there be intervention to say, actually, no, this is a crime, it must be prosecuted, this child must be protected? Does that happen?
Yes. Okay. We are doing it if it is reported to us. And even as a directorate, we have recruited child protection volunteers who are our ears, because we are not many. So wherever there is a kind of get reported to us, when we intervene, I'm very sure that we have done so many cases of such kind, and we are managed to prosecute them, and people have been put in. I can give you an example. In the year 2014, a missionary came from the US to Kenya, to an institution here in the central region. He sodomized 12 children under 12 years. What is the Sexual Offences Act say, Section 8? Whoever defiles a child who is under the age of 11 years, you go in for life. I think the guy took off to the US. We came to run after 1 month when he has gone off. We reported to the FBI in the US Embassy. We investigated. The guy was arrested in the US. I remember I prosecuted that case in the US. I stayed in the US for 1 month with 8 children who went to give evidence, plus 2 doctors. We had the former head of complaints, public complaints at the DC headquarters. We prosecuted the guy is in for 42 years. So you can see when a case report as child protection officers, we make a follow-up, and a capital offense is a capital offense. The perpetrators must face the full force of the law. And there are so many cases I can tell you. We have the way you are talking about the issue of 116. As a directorate, we have a child protection information management system, a CPMS. Where these cases are being reported? The cases of the defilement, the numbers are going high, and we have to make sure the perpetrators are facing the full force of the law.
I want to add that I think when you look at the circles of how you protect a child, one, it begins with the child themselves and then the community around it. And so one of the progress we've made, which we need to keep investing in, is building capacity of children to be able to self-identify this is an abuse, and be able to know where to report it, child-led mechanisms to do that. But I think a gap that is there, and let me link this to, say, Shakahola. One of the things we noticed in the Shakahola massacre, which more than half of those who are victims are actually children, is that we've had children and families from as far as Vihiga, from Meru, traveling all the way. And one of the questions I've asked myself, by the time you have 20 children missing from even one sub-county, from school for 1 week, alarm should have gone up.
Yes.
So what do we need? We need a community-led child rights monitoring system. I know, for example, the government now is investing on, the community health promoters. They're talking about the volunteers in the child protection system. Until we have community-based organizations being able to do this. And in the Children's Act, we were part of drafting it. And one of the clauses that was brought in is to create a child welfare fund. I know there's going to be more conversation on how to actually implement this. But I see an opportunity in which community-based organizations can be funded so that they have people where you can report cases, so that if a chief is manipulating a case because they've been bribed or something, then the community members are able to know. They know the cases. You can imagine even the matter of street-connected children. It is possible today to try and target them much more effectively by ensuring that community organizations have access to resources to be able to do this. So we can create a per capita or whatever allocation so that for every cases you support, and that will be, besides job creation, it will actually bring the community protection mechanisms right to that level.
In a very few short seconds, what I hear you saying is that it cannot just be a government effort. It cannot just be a civil society effort. It has to be civil society, government, community, individuals. Everybody has to be involved in this if we're going to see an increased reduction, if that can be said, of child violence.
Exactly. There's the saying, I think South Africans, I really agree with Ubuntu. You know, I am because you are. Until we get to that point where you appreciate that the well-being of your own children is pegged on the well-being of the children around you, because eventually they're able to influence each other, and therefore communities must be at the forefront of doing the intervention.
And I think in addition to what he has said, the 116 is a sort of free line.
Yes.
Children can call in, adults can call in, the youth can call in to report a case they have. We receive so many cases. That's why the numbers have gone up. We are now pre-testing what we call Furugumaba, which is a community-led initiative being funded by Plan International, and some civil society are supporting us. We have done it in Kirivi, Kware, now we are in Nairobi and Kiambu. There are reasons why we are in Nairobi and Kiambu. You know, this is one of the densely populated. Wherever a case is reported, a follow-up to the headquarters is very fast because it's online reporting.
More conversations that need to be had. Samuel Munyuwiny, thank you for joining us this morning. Mwambi Mongare, thanks for being here.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.